Welcome back, Trekyards crew. He is Commander Cockings.
He is Captain Foley.
Today we're here to talk about the finale of Season 1 of Strange New Worlds, A Quality of Mercy.
Or Balance of Terror 2. The Reckoning.
I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I didn't know where they were going from one minute to the next, although there was a lot of lines from Balance of Terror. But that's great. And it also shuts up a lot of people that saw the preview for this one and were like, oh my god, they're doing that. They're just doing this again. And it's like, yes, they are, literally. I thought it was fantastic the way that, Pike is trying to fix things, trying to make things right, trying to save himself and the cadets. The repercussions of that, I thought was really great that this actually played out. I was super surprised to see future Pike. Seeing Kirk was another nice little touch. I really expected the guy that plays Sarek to be the Romulan commander, though. I was waiting for that. Didn't get that, and we also got the TNG type Romulans with the modified foreheads a bit, but that didn't bother me. It actually looked really good. So anyway, lots to break down. I really enjoyed it. That's the main key. Is it the best Star Trek ever? No, but is it up there? Yes, and it's probably the best of this season. So that's my opinion. What about you?
I luckily had none of that going in. I just woke up, watched it, didn't see any previews. I heard Romulans, but I thought Romulans could have been like a reference. So I had no idea it was going to be a full Balance of Terror. Now, ripoff is the wrong word, obviously. And it isn't Star Trek Into Darkness, where it redoes the plot. It is Balance of Terror again. But because it's a tapestry, it doesn't matter. But also it does matter because it's interesting. So it's a very unique blend. So unique they don't even explain the time travel aspects, except I guess Boreth, Klingons, and Wrath of Khan era have time travel easily. They didn't explain it. They didn't even go into it. It doesn't necessarily make sense. But they didn't give enough for it to make sense or not make sense. Whatever, right? Okay, fine. So it's all a caveat in itself, and it could just be a delusion if you want to go full on. It's nebulous, which actually really kind of works. I was so thrilled it was an hour and 1 minute going in. That I was like, excellent. They put some money, they put some budget in. It's a hell of a lot of things going on feeling wise. Finally a Pike episode, and he shone. And my god, the effectiveness of old Pike. Lower the tone of his voice, the makeup, super effective, old but not too old in a Trek context of, well, it's old but you should still look the same. Phenomenal. Yes, I also thought the Sarek actor would come back from Discovery. I thought that was the obvious joke. That said, the guy was great. Very, very different. Very, very different to the first guy. I would not have call him the same character in terms of tone. But I liked his tone. He was fun. It was good. We love alternate realities. We love alternate universes. We love time travel. This was all of those in one big thing. And it also sort of reiterated how strong and powerful and important Kirk is. Because Pike's command style is not always a solution. The fact that Pike being there caused the war that's, was caused the end of the Federation. But Kirk was the one in his crew that could save the Federation. That shows why Kirk is a better captain overall. Just... it was nice that they didn't diminish Kirk in this episode to make Pike Reynolds look stronger. They kept him strong. Maybe not necessarily an iconic performance. I didn't get much Kirk from him. I just got Officer Man. But they didn't diminish his character, particularly. Although certainly seeing Farragut as a non-Connie ruins the Starship Farragut fan film series of 15 years that assumed it was a Connie. Because it's now just an excellent kit bash. So that was a bit of a weird to see, It's not a Connie, but it does make sense if Kirk, wouldn't be in command of a Connie. But then they introduce a new Connie at the start, which isn't one of the 15 or 12. But also now you can
that was in a Sombra class?
But now you can have Sombras that are identical. So it's and the lighting, my god, the lighting was phenomenal. It was so interesting, and even Ethan Peck playing Leonard Nimoy Spock rather than Ethan Peck Spock was subtle because he wasn't playing they had to actually be their older selves. That's part of the point. So it was a really, really, really interesting episode, and ballsy, I think is the word, to literally make Balance of Terror again after the reaction of Into Darkness, and also ballsy and quite impressive. And also they did the Picard season 1 finale right as well, because they did Into Darkness better, and they did Picard season finale better without doing much different. Just the way they did it was 1,000 times better.
And kudos to them for moving the communication station to where it belongs, behind the captain, for this episode. I don't know if you noticed that, but where Uhura was sitting and the communications displays were all behind the captain.
Because she'd never really been at that station proves I didn't really register she was anywhere else.
For the cage, it's always on the front right of the bridge. And even at the end of the episode, that's where she is again. So, I mean, that was a nice little touch as well, which not a lot of people probably would notice, but I thought I'd point that out. At the end of the episode, I'm thinking, if you're new to Star Trek, and this is like one of your first Star Treks, you don't know about Balance of Terror, you're going to be in for a treat when you finally do watch Balance of Terror. I think it was well handled, actually.
Now, I will say, Balance of Terror is a better episode, but they're different episodes. The fact that we don't see the perspective of the Romulan commander in the middle makes it very different, having the two Federation captains change it very much. It becomes more Balance of Terror as they go, which is good, and then it becomes Picard Season 1 done better, and then it's a really interesting hodgepodge that works. It's a patchwork of things.
Did you notice the subtle little change at the end with when he pulls up Kirk's file, and he had the palm leaf of Axanar Peace Mission, but Axanar is spelt differently. It's AXINAR instead of AXANAR. So they changed the spelling of Axanar. Yeah, I don't know if that was a little bit of a jab, but hey, that's good though.
I mean, clearly, clearly if that's done. I liked how he was visibly de-aged. I thought that was nice. He looked younger. Because what a cheat. I mean, again, those cheeky mother effers, they get to have a Captain Kirk without affecting anything. And once you get into the realm of nothing here matters, they can just have fun. Like seeing Spock get ostensibly killed is close. That was fantastic. Really good, powerful stuff that you can't do in any other situation.
And speaking of the end of the episode, when you think it's all over, and then the end of the episode where Una gets taken away by the other captain, which we're not sure if the Cayuga is a Constitution class or a Sombra class.
I mean, it can't be a Connie because there are 12 Connies, but it looks like a Connie. It's the same size as the Connie, but they've ruined that now, so whatever. Who cares?
But yeah, I mean, that's a hell of a way to end a season, and Pike saying it's not over. It's a totally different story than the main story, the bulk of the movie, or it felt like a movie almost.
It did. It was very close to the movie, this one.
I don't know. It just that took me by surprise. So we're going into season 2 with something really cool to see what Pike is going to be fighting for. But whether he's successful or not is another question. Anyway, just one.
I was taken by lack of surprise. I sort of sensed that was coming because it was set up in the middle. You need to have something to cliffhanger. It makes sense. They're filming season 2 the next week, so they just keep telling those stories. But also, you really can't have nothing narratively from their show to carry. This was a finishing off Pike's Cage and Discovery and Strange New World story thematically, and so Una's the next one. However, the very fact that Una's been in prison for 7 years without timeline changes means that we now know where she's been all of Trek history. She's going to prison and Pike can't stop it without changing history. And the whole point of this episode is you shouldn't change the history. So we now know she's in prison, and that's sad, but it sort of creates this weird, as with Pike, we know he's going to die. We know she's going to be in jail now.
It made me wonder too, like, first of all, how would Pike handle the Man Trap, Charlie X, Where No Man Has Gone Before, The Naked Time, The Enemy Within, Mud's Women, What Little Girls Are Made Of, Miri, Dagger of the Mind, and Corbin Might Maneuver, and Conscious of the King. All those come before Balance of Terror. So does The Menagerie, but I mean, that doesn't really count. So it would just be interesting to see how he deals with those situations.
So saying each season they should redo a new TOS episode.
Yeah.
The yearly tradition.
Yeah. Yeah, they should actually. That'd be kind of cool. Considering you remember what the time crystal shows you, it made me wonder, like, what if he still does the thing, but he also knows how Balance of Terror episode is going to play out, so he can change it somewhat. But they did make a point of saying, Future Pike, that no matter what you do, Spock always gets taken out in some way as a result. They had that little line of dialogue at the end, which kind of nullifies that. So if it wasn't Balance of Terror, it would be something else, so.
Except they're kind of working against the Discovery Season 2 time travel logic, where Michael Burnham's mum saw every possible future, always whatever. Then she changed it and changed the entire future, everything's fine. I don't think for a second that Wratha Khan era Klingons on a temple could time travel Pike through 100 different realities, showing his past self to change reality. He changed it 100 times, but it's 100 futures which don't affect his future, because he would, every time he would show himself, he would then know he showed himself and change his own actions. So that's what I mean. It's so, they went so non-informative, because the fact that he disappears in the end is not a we change time, it's he's disappearing. So it's clearly like a vision being sent back in time, not a physical. That's what I took from that. This is one thing I really wish they'd not done, is that when future Spock mind melds with not really their Pike, I wish we'd had nothing happen, because future Spock can't mind meld with present Pike living a memory of future him, who's telling future him like that he didn't time travel, he saw memories. So they kind of mystified their own logic there as well. That kind of helps to make it all be a 100% his brain a vision, which is fine. It's just that was muddying the water of what are the rules here. The answer is there are no rules. I didn't really think it through fully. Nebulous is.
Yeah, one thing that was kind of disappointing to me was the fact that there was a new design for the Farragut. First of all, it should have been a Constitution class. I wish they would have used that design for the Sombra class in the last episode, so it was a different class of ship.
Would have been perfect. They had the model.
Yeah,
they had it.
Right?
You could just re-render that stuff.
Could use the Connie as the Farragut, which is what it's supposed to be. But a little bit of a disappointment there. But speaking of, we got a whole bunch of a few new Romulan ships. They used the antique bird of prey from Picard, which was used very well, looked very beautiful. And then a fleet came in, which I did not expect, I gotta say. And then the Federation fleet of the, what do they call them? The Delta class attack ships, which are just unmanned mining freighters. Well, they don't know. Well, they can probably scan and see that they don't have much weaponry. I'm just saying. It makes the Federation look weak.
Yeah, in those 45 minutes, Kirk didn't have the ability to sensor ghost all the ships with full weaponry. Yes, indeed. I mean, you can argue they don't. Also, they've got no crews. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, in fairness, the bluff only lasted like 6 minutes. The scene is so quick anyway. Now, that was great. Now, obviously, Strange Worlds is a visual retcon, but also therefore we can ignore it as a visual retcon because it's changing stuff that's now it was a thing. So, are we really saying that there was a Romulan fleet, including the Praetor? Warp distance array from the bird of prey into Bounce Terror. Is that what you're saying? That if that Kirk was minutes away from the Praetor, because they warp in very, I guess, 2 hours, but still, for as they make a point, which I love. Again, distance means something finally. So that Praetor fleet is waiting there for the ship to come back. You know what I mean? Like that changes the entire context of Bounce Terror if we include them both as one canon together. Unless, obviously, how many ripples does Pike change? I mean, the fact that there's no Sulu, there's no Chekhov, there's no... the fact that crew's different, the fact that so many things did change. This wasn't the Constitution class from Star Trek TOS. I've got a theory about why that is. They didn't change the uniforms yet. So this already was not... The time had been changed so much just by Pike not being swapped out that this wasn't even the most advanced colony of the time, etc., etc. So who's to say if the fleet was there, if other things changed? So it's kind of hard to say. Again, it's the nebulous of, well, this, and this. Like that, at least it should have straight struts. We know what the code looked like in Bounce Terror. It's not like that. Would have been nice if they changed exterior to kind of match. Or I was kind of expecting, as soon as they said we'll take it to the future, the fact they made an alternate Wrath of Khan. Okay, it was alternate. It wasn't a true Wrath of Khan. Fine. But it would have been nice if that had been a full Wrath of Khan, and then everyone else worn just TOS model, like without the weird deltas. Like if they'd been wearing the full correct uniforms. On the Strange World sets, fine, you can't change them. That would have been one nice thing to kind of make the time jump feel more practical. Because part of all good things, why it works so effortlessly, is because there's 3 different timelines, everyone has a very different style. Having Pike go from him to him, if it had been in the TOS uniform, that I think would have helped the jump. And they would have only have needed, a few uniforms, quote unquote. They could have reused a couple. That I think was a missed opportunity, but I'd rather have a proper CG fleet than TOS uniforms, but then again, just you can make TOS uniforms really cheaply for mass produce.
It seems like a waste to me because, like we said, the Sombra class was just the Connie, which was annoying. Why didn't they make a new class for the Sombra and not spend money modeling some Romulan ships, which we'll likely never see again because you're not supposed to run into the Romulans until Balance of Terror. So it's not like they're going to be revisiting the Romulans. So why did they do that? That just seems like an odd choice to me. That being said, I really, really, really like the new plasma torpedo effect. It's really well done. Although the fact that it slams into the Enterprise, they fired it at a distance. No, they didn't. You were damn close when they fired that. That would have annihilated the Enterprise.
further than point blank, but it wasn't far.
In
Yes.
space, that's point blank for sure.
Yeah, I don't think the Romulans
I don't
were.
know.
I don't think Romulans were further than that from the space asteroid when they shot it. They were probably further. Yeah.
It just seemed like odd because in Balance of Terror they actually run from the torpedo, which the distance it dissipates. I wish that would have been there instead of flying straight into it and having it hit a strut and not blow the whole nacelle off. That's not how plasma torpedoes work.
Well, at least it did work like it does normally. There is distance being weaker. It does start small and then grow. There are. It did follow the logic of what it should have done. Although yeah, it was pretty cringe when Pike says "brace for impact." I'm thinking, turn the ship. We saw you fight the Shepherds. You can do this effortlessly. Yeah, still a bit of a cringe moment. The Prometheus School of Running, which is run straight into the kill zone while in the kill zone.
Yes.
So that, obviously, and those that say we criticise Strange Worlds, we say things that need to be talked about. We've been almost entirely positive this week, so guys, come on, we're fair. That's the whole point.
And speaking of, what did you think of the new Rathacon uniform? I know we'll do a video on it. I know that.
Well, I've already looked at shots, so I'm more biased. But it is not the same at all.
A little bit. Well, it looked good at first, and then the strap thing bothered me. It was a little too low, and
yeah, I mean, at first it's a beautiful moment of oh my god, they've done it, and then you see the shoulders with the printing, which kind of looks like a weird liquid metal. It just ruins the effect entirely, and it looks like a much cheaper outfit than it should be. So it was their Strange New Worlds uniform. It was great to see, but they couldn't help but do their version. But obviously, alternate timeline, you can say whatever. It's not the real one. It's an alternate timeline one. There are many differences, which I've seen while doing comparison shots. But yeah, super great to see. Just alternate. Although I was not thinking he was an alternate Pike. I was thinking he was going to be post, because when that's the first scene pretty much, right? You get this sense of okay, he's from the future, but we'd never see Pike post. Like we know he ends up on Cage Planet, but what happens in Wrath of Khan, we have no idea. So I was hoping it would just be like, well, I actually was healed. Now we can tell more stories with Pike later on. Like they can unend his story by saying he got healed for some reason, But having been an alternate guy maintains his path. Just so kind of best of both worlds there. I just would have liked if he was actually the real Pike. They don't change the timeline, but they don't have to have a real Wrath of Khan rather than a Stranger Worlds one. What did you think when you saw it then? In general vibes.
Yeah, I mean, I was super happy to see the back of the uniform. Like yes, and then the next scene is like you see the vinyl or the leather or whatever on the arm, and it's like okay, that's interesting. It still looks kind of good. All of the accoutrements were right. All of the pins were right. That was great. We're going to be doing a breakdown video on the uniform specifically, so make sure you check out that video. But I thought it looked really nice, and then I started noticing how low the flap was and how the attachment piece just kind of did a weird. It didn't look good. It didn't look as crisp and clean as the actual one. If they had not done that, I would have been impressed. I would have even liked that look on the arm a little bit better. But I was super stoked to see that, and I did not expect it. So that was a nice surprise that I'm glad was not ruined for me.
Well, because it's weird, because Strange Worlds is a visual retcon, so it's weird to use anything from other canon because they're by definition changing everything they show. Now they did change it. It isn't a Wrath of Khan. But it kind of showed me that the original Wrath of Khan just is perfect. That's why it's standing the test of time. This one's a worse version because they had to change it because they had to change it.
But now that they changed the timeline, it'll be the right one when it gets to that point.
But actually, that's interesting because that means that there was a timeline. The original timeline, Pike changes the timeline. So now we know for a fact Discovery isn't the prime timeline because this happened straight after Discovery. No, it is true because Discovery goes into the future of when they left, but after they left, Pike changed the future, made a Romulan war, and then future Pike changed it to make us the prime timeline. So Discovery went to the post-Romulan war timeline of TOS. Because how can you piggyback jump over timeline changes? You can't. They haven't happened yet. So now so Stranger Worlds just decanonized prime timeline. Discovery Season 4 by their own logic, by how they changed time. That you have to do that for that to make sense. Wow, that's awesome. The burn didn't happen, Stuart, because that changed everything else in between. Because there had to be a big Romulan Wrath of Khan era war for the burn to happen, because that would change the whole quadrant. Wow, that's a whole video in itself. Damn.
I don't think it's that simple, but yeah, that's worth discussing at least for sure. this was a treat for a season finale, I gotta say. And Strange New Worlds has really been, each episode's just been bang, 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 firing on all cylinders. Some are not as impactful or as good, but I think this is probably my favorite of the season. But that is kind of a cheat in a way, because it does include like a Wrath of Khan era uniform and stuff like that. Like, it actually pulls in more things, even though they are different.
And it's also at least like 20 minutes of just Balance Terror redone.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't rewatch Balance Terror because we had so much to do today, but I would love to.
I was going to watch it yesterday, just in case, but
I'd love to do a comparison, just compare the lines. So a few lines I'm like, oh, that must be a line from the original. Like, there's a few. There's not that many because it changes quite quickly, but there's a couple I'm like, oh, that's just from the show.
And some of them are subtly different, but yes. I love the reveal of the Romulan, and then the zoom in on, like, instead of McCoy, it's Sam Kirk, Pike, and then Spock raises the eyebrow. Perfect. That's exactly how it should be.
Yeah, there was bonus levels of cheese here, and just the fact that, you know, this felt a lot more appropriately. Balance Terror couldn't afford to do this big scale battle. It was also a submarine thing, and you don't tend to have, you know, naval forces can't suddenly rush into an area at warp, so you couldn't by definition have this in Balance Terror based on the thematics. But to be able to go modern tech with now a fleet, that's how you add that one boss level. And bloody Praetor, that's awesome. Female Praetor, which is again another groundbreaking thing by itself.
One thing that kind of bothered me, honestly, is Ortega's reaction. At least until Spock says, "I think we should attack," and then she's like, "Well, if Spock and I can agree, then all's good." And then she's fine from then on. But leading up to that, I was really getting disappointed in Ortega's for acting like that, considering she's known Spock for ever. Whereas in Balance of Terror, the guy on the bridge, we're not sure how long he served with Spock, probably not that long. This is 7 years later from where Strange New Worlds is taking place, and she served with Spock that whole time on the Enterprise. So for her to act as she did towards Spock, the pointy-eared elephant in the room, bothered me a little bit, but it wasn't as full-on as it could be, and it was very quickly dropped. So, although he did yell at her, I love that Pike got mad and actually yelled at her at one point, because that shows that Pike's under pressure, and I thought that was good, because he's always Mr. Friendly, Mr. Buddy Captain. So, yeah, that was good. I like that part. But
yeah, it was certainly odd. I guess that was a big part of Balance Terror, was the revelation factor, and you couldn't remove that because it's socially a huge moment, and they couldn't have the same dude because they were throwing out Ortegas for no reason. And clearly Pike wants to keep his crew. Like, I was waiting for Bones to appear, but it makes sense that he'd keep his doctor rather than, you know, the crew changes make sense. That's all fine. I didn't get, even for a second, Ortega's is mean against Spock in the way that the other guy was. It wasn't personal, I hate Spock in any way. It was a single comment of, well, they're pointy ears too, which I can understand because it's a stressful thing. Everything else is purely, these are Romulans, let's attack them because they're Romulans, because of the war previously. So I didn't get any racism out of it per se, or even against Spock. I thought she was very specific in her displeasure, but, you know, they did genocide some of our planets and did some horrible things. I mean, it's, you know, it was just weird to see her character, who was one thing, who was more funny, be this. But then again, we have zero idea of her career post what actually happened in the timeline. So, you know, this is not the Ortegas we know. 7 years is a long time to change anybody. So she obviously was different. So,
and going back to the bridge stations, it was cool to see Ortegas on the other side, which was just a subtle little thing, and then at the end back to the other side. So just that, and just even the communications station, like I said, was a nice little touch that I'm glad they actually paid attention to and did. So
well, certainly it should be the TOS Connie. So I was obviously hoping to do a few more repaints, just like it's Enterprise, where they actually changed the bridge a little bit. I mean, the lighting was different, certainly, and that helped the feel different. It didn't feel like the other one, but a few more repaints, a few less lights on would have been appreciated. You know, they said, we can't change our bridge. Okay, what can we do that isn't changing that will still change the vibe? And they did, and that's okay. Just, you know, a little bit more TOS would have been, you know, that was their chance to make the outside look more TOS, just to make the struts, you know. I don't really see that Pike would choose to not refit his Enterprise when the refit came earlier in the year. Why is he having an older, I guess he's sentimental, but, you know, why has he not refitted his ship to the modern version? That would sure take at least 1 to 2 years, so he's just choosing to keep it flying. But again, that's a video about that.
It could be that they were just out because they said they were at the neutral zone. It was to take like days to get a message to Starfleet, so they are on the outer edge. So, considering nothing changed with the accident, which was 6 months ago,
which is weird in itself. I didn't realize that Pike got hurt that in TOS, but okay.
Well, I mean, 6 months prior, if he had had that accident, and then it's like the Enterprise doesn't have a captain, let's take it into dry dock, refit it, and give it a new captain, fresh out. So
Well, I mean that doesn't work, but it sort of works. I mean, Pike would have left before that anyway. He was at the academy for a while, so it's not that the accident happened 6 months ago for Pike, but he hasn't been on the Enterprise for, we'd assume, the 1-2 years to refit. So it's more a case of he left the first time round, or the original Prime, got refitted, Kirk took command, and this timeline he just kept being in command the entire time, so never decided to get refit. So that, I think, is what we mean.
Well, because you got to think, in this timeline, he sent all those letters to all the cadets. So
he changed lots of things. I mean,
it was obviously different. Like, he didn't want to be anywhere near the area when the accident was supposed to happen.
And he probably thought the best way of not having the accident is also just don't lose command of the Enterprise. And therefore, I don't want to risk... I'd rather be in Alpha Sigma 6 on the deep second 5-year mission than being near Earth, so I won't have it refitted. I'll just leave it as is. So that works fine. But it's interesting, because if it's 6 months ago the accident would have happened, that means you could have a Pike and Kirk, Captain Kirk scene at the end of the season. Because now they've officially timed exactly when. Because Balance Terror, Kirk's not been in charge for only 6 months. I'm just saying. So
this also shows maybe why and how Kirk got the Enterprise. Not only because of his grades and his skill, but also because Pike would recommend him. Because Pike will remember this whole incident from the time crystals, and he'll also... Yeah, I think so. I think that's what they're implying at the end with the whole, you're a good captain and just come and have a sit with me.
Yes, I suppose, but that's like a retcon saying the only reason that Spock likes Kirk is because Michael Burnham said be friends with humans. Now it's like saying the only reason Kirk got captain was because Pike saw a future version in Strange New Worlds and gave him captain, or he's put a word in. That does diminish the value of him getting captain of his own merit but I agree, now that's part of the canon, unless it's not because it's Strange New Worlds. Yes, that would make sense.
It's just it's a little helpful nudge. It's not that he didn't earn it. It's just that, Pike would seek him out, and or at least recommend him, which would help. So I have no issue with it. It also explains why Sam Kirk's not on the Enterprise, because he probably doesn't want to serve under his brother and decided to leave Starfleet or something about that time.
Yeah, that was a huge disconnect. He shouldn't have been in Starfleet at that point. They should have made a point of, I served with your brother. I know you did. He left Starfleet because what the hell happened in between to leave Starfleet and whatever. That was that I thought was a misstep to have. It was nice to see George and Jim together, but I didn't think that worked quite as well. But he wasn't in it much. That's okay.
Just to clarify for everybody, George is his real name. Sam is his nickname. His name is George Samuel Kirk.
Only his family calls him, but they retconned it. Everyone calls him Sam.
Yeah, only his brother called him that. But now, yeah. So just so everybody's clear, so nobody's confused.
But like I say, would you like to now see sort of the end of season 4 of 5 of Strange New Worlds? We get, TOS 0.5. We get like one scene where we end the season kind of like, Smallville or whatever. He puts in the cape for 4 seconds. We get Kirk take command of the Enterprise because now they can timeline wise. Pike is still alive. He's like, well, I'm gonna get injured in 2.5 months. Let me come aboard and say goodbye to the Enterprise. Now they can meet where everyone's in the places they should be.
Well, you got to remember, Kirk's still going to be an episode of season 2 because we see him with the different badge and stuff. So that'll be interesting to see how Pike reacts to him in that case. So there's still a lot to unpack with that. So it's only the first year.
But would you want to see that sort of, now
yes,
it links in
absolutely
directly? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought he got hurt like ages before TOS, a couple of years.
No, it was right before. They kind of say that in the Menagerie, that it's been a few months or whatever. And the Menagerie is episode 11 of season 1. So.
Yeah, I never got that sense, but that's cool. I mean, yeah, opens that right up. I guess, so I'll just close out. What do you think of then our new James T. Kirk? Because he was captain, so he was himself,
There's only one instance where he reminded me of Kirk, and that's where the Farragut was doing that maneuver and the rolling the camera. There he looked and acted exactly like Kirk for like a couple seconds. Other than that, I'm underwhelmed, I gotta say. He just does not give off the gravitas of Captain Kirk at all. And Yeah, not. I don't know. I'll have to see more of him, but was not impressed, honestly. I'm just gonna put that out there.
Because while a few years have been different, he was a full captain, so he was a lot closer to who he's going to be than he would have been in season 2 or 3 or whatever. So we kind of use that as an excuse. Yeah, I thought he was very competent. He felt captainy, but he had almost no charisma, like you said.
He felt like captain of the week that's gonna go crazy and kill his crew, or just get killed.
Honestly, that tells you how good Chris Pine was, that he had charisma. Because I don't like Chris Pine particularly as Kirk. He's playing a caricature, but he has a certain charisma, a certain swagger. This guy didn't. Now, that said, it's good to see a professional Kirk and not a swagger, because the context people say, oh, he's womanized or whatever. He's not really. He's actually very professional. So I like that side of him, but he didn't shine through. And he was getting a lot of screen time. It's not as if he didn't have time to shine. The actors didn't give us... He wasn't trying to... Unlike Ethan Peck, who kind of like channels a bit of Nimoy, I didn't think he was channeling Shatner at all. Like, none of the mannerisms, none of the pauses, none of it. Now, he was a good captain, but I would not have called him Kirk, either in look, in vibe, in stature. Good actor, good character, definitely not a James T. Kirk that I would recognise out of a lineup.
Well, he won the audition, so he must have impressed them somehow, so...
Hey, sure. But it's cool to see. And yeah, boy, what a thing to go to finish on. Season 2, we don't know when, but hopefully, you know, they've shown they don't have to rush it. They can kick some ass. They've set up a really strong baseline. Season 2, come what may, and check out our very in-depth review alive tomorrow, or tonight. Probably a long one. And all of our many videos. It's different for us, just a first reaction versus breakdown, and boy, there's some great graphics to break down.
That's right. So check that out. Make sure you're subscribed, obviously, so you don't miss that, and click the notification bell icon for the same reason. Also, like this video, and if you join us for the live, be sure to super chat and help us out any way you can. And since you're watching this one, which isn't live, you can hit that super thanks button down below to support us. Also, a lot of other options like Patreon and just joining the channel. So many ways to help out Trekyards and continue having us do what we do for you guys, because we love you guys.
And of course, guys, just tune in, because it does make a big difference. We make all stuff for you.
So until next time, he is Commander Cockings.
He's got a Foley. Bye, guys.
See you later.